The Western Philosophy will do it. Chapter 6, Immanuel Kant and German Idealism. Section 1, Rules to Kant. Never has a system of thought so dominated an epoch as the philosophy of Immanuel Kant dominated the thought of the 19th century. After almost threescore years of quiet and secluded development, the uncanny Scot of Königsberg roused the world from its dogmatic slumber. In 1781, with his famous Critic of Pure Reason, and from that year to our own, the critical philosophy has ruled the speculative roost of Europe. The philosophy of Schopenhauer rose to brief power on the Romantic wave that broke in 1848. The theory of evolution swept everything before it after 1859, and the exhilarating iconoclasm of Nietzsche won the center of philosophic stage as the century came to a close. But these were secondary and the surface developments. Underneath them, the strong and the steady current of the Kantian movement flowed on, always wider and deeper, until today its essential theorems are the axioms of all mature philosophy. Nietzsche takes Kant for granted and passes on. Schopenhauer calls the Critic the most important work in German literature, and considers any man a child until he has understood Kant. Spencer could not understand Kant, and for precisely that reason, perhaps fell a little short of the fullest philosophic stature. To adapt Hegel's phrase about Spinoza, to be a philosopher, one must first have been a Kantian. Therefore, let us become Kantian at once. But it cannot be done at once, apparently, for in philosophy, as in politics, the longest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Kant is the last person in the world whom we should read on Kant. Our philosopher is like and unlike Jehovah. He speaks through cloud, but without illumination of the lightning flash. He disdains examples and the concrete. They would have made his book too long, he argued. So abbreviated, it contains some 800 pages. Only professional philosophers were expected to read him, and these would not need illustrations. Yet, when Kant gave the MS of the Critic to his friend Hertz, a man much versed in speculation, Hertz returned it half-read, saying he feared insanity if he went on with it. What shall we do with such a philosopher? Let us approach him deviously and cautiously, beginning at a safe and respectful distance from him. Let us start at various points on the circumference of the subject, and then group our way towards that subtle center where the most difficult of all philosophies has its secret and its treasure. Section 1. From Voltaire to Kant. The road here is from theoretical reason without religious faith to religious faith without theoretical reason. Voltaire means the Enlightenment, the encyclopedia, the age of reason. The warm enthusiasm of Francis Bacon had inspired all Europe except Rousseau with unquestioning confidence in the power of science and logic to solve at last all problems and illustrate the infinite perfectibility of man. Condorcet, imprisoned, wrote his historical tableau of the progress of the human spirit, 1793, which spoke the sublime trust of the 18th century in knowledge and reason, and asked no other key to utopia than universal education. Even the steady Germans had their Hochfloren, their rationalist, Christian Wolff, and their hopeful Lessing, and the excitable Parisians of the Revolution dramatized this apotheosis of the intellect by worshipping the goddess of reason, impersonated by a charming lady of the streets. In Spinoza, this faith in reason had begotten a magnificent structure of geometry and logic. The universe was a mathematical system and could be described a priority by pure deduction from accepted axioms. In hopes, the rationalism of Bacon had become an uncompromising atheism and materialism. Again, nothing was to exist but atoms and the void. From Spinoza to Diderot, the wrecks of faith lay in the wake of advancing reason. One by one, the old dogmas disappeared. The Gothic cathedral of medieval belief, with its delightful details and grotesques, collapsed. The ancient god fell from his throne along with the Bourbons. Heaven faded into mere sky, and hell became only an emotional expression. Helvetius and Holbach made atheism so fashionable in the salons of France that even the clergy took it up, and La Mettrie went to peddle it in Germany under the auspices of Prussia's king. When in 1784 Lessing shocked Jacobi by announcing himself a follower of Spinoza, it was a sign that faith had reached its nadir, and that reason was triumphant. David Hume, who played so vigorous a role in the Enlightenment assault on supernatural belief, said that when reason is against a man, he will soon turn against reason. Religious faith and hope, voiced in 100,000 steeples, rising out of the soil of Europe everywhere, were too deeply rooted in the institutions of society and in the heart of man to permit their ready surrender to the hostile verdict of reason. It was inevitable that this faith and this hope, so condemned, would question the competence of the judge and would call for an examination of reason as well as of religion. What was this intellect that proposed to destroy with a syllogism the beliefs of thousands of years and of millions of men? Was it infallible, or was it one human organ like any other, with strictest limits to its functions and powers? The time had come to to examine this ruthless revolutionary tribunal that was dealing out death so lavishly to every ancient hope. The time had come for a critic of reason. Section 2, From Locke to Kant. The way had been prepared for such an examination by the work of Locke. Berkeley and Hume, and yet apparently their results too were hostile to religion. John Locke, 1632 to 1704, had proposed to apply to psychology the inductive tests and methods of Francis Bacon. In his great essay on human understanding, 1689, reason, for the first time in modern thought, had turned in upon itself, and philosophy had begun to scrutinize the instrument which it so long had trusted. This introspective movement in philosophy grew step by step with the introspective novel as developed by Richardson, and Rousseau. Just as the sentimental and emotional color in Clarissa Holloway and New Nouvelle Hales Lois had its counterpart in the philosophic exaltation of instinct and feeling above intellect and reason. How does knowledge arise? Have we, as some good people suppose, innate ideas, as, for example, a right and a wrong, and God, ideas inherent in the mind, from birth prior to all experience? Anxious theologians worried lest the belief in the deity should disappear because God had not yet been seen in any telescope, had thought that faith and morals might be strengthened if their central and basic ideas were shown to be inborn in every normal soul. But Locke, good Christian though he was, ready to argue most eloquently for the reasonableness of Christianity, could not accept these suppositions. He announced quietly that all our knowledge comes from experience and was first in the sense. The mind is at birth a clean sheet, a tabula rasa, and sense experience writes upon it in 1,000 ways until sensation begets memory and memory begets idea, all of which seemed to lead to the startling conclusion that since only material things can effect our sense, we know nothing but matter and must accept a materialistic philosophy. If sensation are the stuff of thought, the hasty argued, matter must be the material of mind. Not at all, said Bishop George Berkeley, 1684 to 1753. This Lockean analysis of knowledge proves rather that matter does not exist except as a form of mind. It was a brilliant idea to refute materialism by the simple expedient of showing that we know of no such thing as matter in all Europe. Only a Gallic imagination could have conceived this metaphysical magic. But see how obvious it is, said the bishop. Has not Locke told us that all our knowledge is derived from sensation? Therefore, all our knowledge of anything is merely our sensation of it, and the ideas derived from those sensations. A thing is merely a bundle of perceptions, exampled, classified, and interpreted sensations. You protest that your breakfast is much more substantial than a bundle of perceptions, and that a hammer that teaches you carpentry through your thumb has a most magnificent materiality. But your breakfast is at first nothing but a congeries of sensations of sight and the smell and the touch, and then of taste, and then of internal comfort and warmth. Likewise, the hammer is a bundle of sensations of color, size, shape, weight, touch, etc. Its reality for you is not in its materiality, but in the sensations that come from your thumb. If you had no senses, the hammer would not exist for you at all. It might strike your dead thumb forever, and yet win from you not the slightest attention. It is only a bundle of sensations or a bundle of memories. It is a condition of the mind. All matter, so far as we know it, is the mental condition, and the only reality that we know directly in mind. So, for materialism. But the Irish bishop had reckoned without the Scottish skeptic. David Hume, 1711 to 1776, at the age of 26, shocked all Christendom with his highly heretical treatise on human nature. One of the classics and the marvels of modern philosophy. We know the mind, said Hume, only as we know matter by perception, though it be in this case internal. Never do we perceive any such entity as the mind. We perceive merely separate ideas, memories, feelings, etc. The mind is not a substance, an organ that has ideas. It is only an abstract name for the series of ideas. The perceptions, memories, and feelings are the mind. There is no observable soul behind the processes of thought. The result appeared to be that Hume has as effectually destroyed mind as Berkeley had destroyed matter. Nothing was left, and the philosophy found itself in the midst of ruins of its own making. No wonder that a wit advised the abandonment of the controversy, saying, no matter, never mind. But Hume was not content to destroy orthodox religion by dissipating the concept of soul. He proposed also to destroy science by dissolving the concept of law. Science and philosophy alike, since Bruno and Galileo, had been making much of natural law of necessity in the sequence of effect upon cause. Spinoza had reared his majestic metaphysics upon this proud conception. But observe, said Hume, that we never perceive cause or laws. We perceive events and sequences, and infer causation and necessity. A law is not an eternal and necessary decree to which events are subjected, but merely a mental summary and shorthand of our kaleidoscopic experience. We have no guarantee that the sequence hitherto observed will reappear unaltered in future experience. Law is an observed custom in the sequence of events, but there is no necessity in custom. Only mathematical formulas have necessity. They alone are inherently and unchangeably true, and this merely because such formulae are tautological. The predicate is already contained in the subject. 3 multiple 3 equal 9 is an eternal and necessary truth only because 3 multiple 3 and 9 are one and the same thing, different expressed. The predicate adds nothing to the subject. Science then must limit itself strictly to mathematics and direct experiment. It cannot trust to unverified deduction from laws. When we run through libraries persuaded of these principles, writes our uncanny skeptic, what havoc must we make if we take in our hands any volume of school metaphysics? For instance, let us ask, does it contain any abstract reasoning concerning quantity or number? No. Does it contain any experimental reasoning concerning matter of fact and existence? No. Commit it then to the flames, for it can contain nothing but sophistry and illusion. Imagine how the ears of the Orthodox tingled at these words. Here, the epistemological tradition, the inquiry into the nature, sources, and validity of knowledge had ceased to be a support to religion. The sword with which Bishop Berkeley had slain the dragon of materialism had turned against the immaterial mind and the immortal soul, and in the turmoil science itself had suffered severe injury. Wonder that when Immanuel Kant in 1775 read a German translation of the works of David Hume, he was shocked by these results and was roused, as he said, from the dogmatic slumber in which he had assumed without question the essentials of religion and the basis of science were both science and faith to be surrendered to the skeptic. What could be done to save them? The section is over.